Hello, thank you, Marion. Thank you, everyone joining today. I hope you're staying warm. They're letting me do another one of these. This is my third year in a row, but I really enjoy doing these. So let me go ahead and share my screen here. Yes, I can. Right, my screen's hiding the button. All right, there we go. Okay, so a wintry Netherlands weekend. So last February, actually President's Day weekend, so exactly a year ago, my sister and I went on a girls' trip to Amsterdam. And this came about because my sister was really wanting to take a trip together somewhere. And she had just recently started a job and she only had a few days of PTO built up. And so we decided to go on a holiday weekend so we could kind of extend the amount of time that we had available to travel. And it didn't start out as we're going to Amsterdam. We wanted to take advantage of the off season and travel in January or February so we could travel cheaply. So what we did, we made a list of a few places that we were both interested in, and then looked for the cheapest flight and also the place that had convenient connections so we weren't spending too much time traveling. And that's how we landed on Amsterdam. And I'm trying to be a little less precious about travel, if that makes sense. Um, so instead of thinking, oh, I have to have 2 weeks and I have to do everything there is to see somewhere, instead saying, hey, if you have the opportunity, just go, have the experience, see what you can see. And so that's what we did. All right, so we had a direct connection from Chicago to Amsterdam, and it was under 10 hours, so it's really not that far. We had an overnight flight. And you can see the Netherlands here is situated with Germany to the east and Belgium to the south. And you'll hear people use the Netherlands and Holland interchangeably, but those are different things. So Holland is an area or a province within the Netherlands. There's North and South Holland, and Amsterdam, the capital, is located in North Holland. And you can see that's the white dot there on the first map where Amsterdam is located. And all right, so this is a map of Amsterdam, and you can see here kind of the U shape or semicircle there of the central canal district of Amsterdam. Amsterdam can be a kind of expensive place to visit, especially if you're trying to stay in the city center. So there are a lot of great neighborhoods out of the central area, and Amsterdam is served by a good tram network. So really, if you want to save some money, as long as your hotel is located near a tram stop, any of these outlying neighborhoods are really good and a good way to save money on accommodations. And so we stayed in the area called Oud Zuid or Old South, which is kind of a ritzy neighborhood, but it's not really touristy. So the accommodations were really reasonable. And I apologize, I'm probably going to butcher the Dutch pronunciations here. But so this second map, which probably just looks like a jumble of lines, is the tram map. And it really wasn't that confusing. It was pretty easy to figure out. After the first day, we felt like we had the hang of it. And we got a pass that had unlimited use of the tram and the metro and most bus lines within Amsterdam. So there were what seemed like a million different like tourist passes that you can get for Amsterdam. Some of them include attractions and transportation. Some of them are just museums or attractions, some just transportation. And so based on the places we knew we were going to visit, so the Anne Frank Museum is not in any of the passes. The Rijksmuseum, I think, is only on the museum pass, so it didn't really make sense to us to buy a pass like the I Am Amsterdam pass. And instead, we bought individual tickets to all the attractions, and then we bought our transportation pass, which you can get in hours, so a 24-hour or a 72-hour pass. And we took the metro from the airport to the train station, and just bought our pass there at the ticket counter at the train station. All right, so this is our hotel in the Oud Zoud neighborhood called the Apollo First. And like a lot of places in Amsterdam, this was a large residence that's been converted into a hotel. And here you can see the common areas were really pretty. Again, this was a budget accommodation. And, it was an old building. So if you're staying in any old historic building, expect to hear noises. There was some street noise, some HVAC noises, things like that. But, just something to be prepared for in an old building. So we're coming up the tiny elevator here. So we could both fit in it if we didn't have our bags, but if we had our suitcase, we had to go down one at a time. So a really tiny elevator that's obviously been retrofitted into this old building. And a lot of the old buildings, you'll see these really narrow winding staircases. So be prepared for that. If you need an elevator, make sure your accommodation has one. And then we stayed in a twin room. So common here in a lot of places in Europe, you can get a king room that's actually two twins pushed together, or they'll pull them apart and you've got two twins. And so that worked really well for us. So we dropped off our bags and we just hit the ground running. And I recommend that if you're trying to fight jet lag, is not to rest, don't take a nap, try to get on the local schedule as quickly as you can, stay up as late as you can on that first day. And so Museumplein, line just means square, is a large area. There's a central green space with several different museums around the square. And it's near the Oud Zoud, so it was really easy for us to get to from our hotel. So it made sense to do this on the first day. And we chose just two of the museums here on the Museumplein, but Netherlands is said to have the most museums per square kilometer than anywhere else in the world. Just in Amsterdam alone, there are something like 45 museums. So in addition to art museums, there's a museum of the canals, a maritime museum, a cat museum, anything you're looking for, they have. So our first stop was at the Van Gogh Museum, or if I was saying it correctly, the Van Gogh Museum. So there's a really great collection here of Van Goghs. You can see on the first floor here is the portrait gallery. So a lot of his self-portraits, you probably know he did a ton of them. So with most of the sites now, they are requiring that you have advanced reservations, and many of them are also timed. So, and I understand why they're doing that now. There's just so many people traveling. They have to control the number of people who are coming through, but it does make it a little harder. It takes a little bit of the fun out of traveling. I think you've got to get your schedule down sometimes to like the quarter hour. It takes more research. I had to figure out, okay, what's the average amount of time people spend in this museum, so we could make reservations for the next thing, so. But definitely make reservations in advance. The day we were there were signs out front saying it sold out for the day. So even in February. All right, and so we're taking some of our own self-portraits here. And then you can see us here at the sunflowers. There's a school group stopped here. Some other of his floral paintings, and then the bedroom, another one of his most famous paintings. A couple things that aren't here. Starry Night is not here. That's at the MoMA in New York. And Irises is at the Getty Museum in California. But like I said, a really incredible collection. If you are a Van Gogh fan at all, this is a must-do museum. All right, so we went back out on the museum plan towards the Rijksmuseum, and there's just a really cool vibe here. People out um, playing chess in the park. Um, it was a really nice afternoon. And so the Rijksmuseum is kind of the national art museum of the Netherlands. Um, People might liken it to the Louvre of the Netherlands. It's a huge museum. And it houses a lot of Rembrandts. Rembrandt, arguably um, the most famous Dutch artist. We spent a lot of our time here in the Dutch masters rooms. So probably the most popular painting they have here is this large one that you see behind glass called the Night Watch. And this was the largest painting that Rembrandt painted. And they think it actually was bigger than this, that it had two additional panels on either side. And what happened was it got moved at one point and it was too big to fit on the wall. So they cut it down, which just seems crazy that you would cut up a Rembrandt, but that's what they did at the time. And maybe you can see there behind us the painting, just the scale of how that big that is with the people in front of it. And then this is just a really beautiful building that this houses this museum. And I forgot to mention something fun about the Rijksmuseum is when the building was turned into a museum, part of the agreement, I guess, was that they had to keep, there's a passageway that goes from one side from the park out to the street, and they had to keep that access open. So you can actually ride a bike right through the center of the museum. So kind of fun. And also a bunch of Vermeers here. Vermeer, you're probably familiar with Girl with the Pearl Earring. That painting is not at this museum, but another very famous Dutch painter. All right, so we walked around the area just to the north of the Rijksmuseum on our way to where we had made a dinner reservation. I also recommend reservations for restaurants. I mistakenly thought like 2 weeks out for a restaurant reservation would be plenty. The place I was trying to book was totally full up. We had to go to Plan B. So if there's a particular place you're wanting to go, make your reservations as early as possible. I used an app called The Fork, but you can also make reservations directly with the restaurants. But here we are walking through the neighborhood near Leidseplein. All these just really pretty row houses. And so if you're a fan of Ted Lasso, this is Jazz Cafe Alto, which you may recognize from the season when they're in Amsterdam. And there's a storyline around this place. It is a real place. So if you don't know, the guys who created Ted Lasso, they worked together at a famous improv troupe that's in Amsterdam called Boom Chicago. So they have a real fondness for Amsterdam, and that's why they set part of the show there. All right, so we had our traditional Dutch dinner. So this came as like a set menu with the soup and entree and the dessert. And then we got an appetizer of bitterballen. So these are little balls of, it's a meat in like a gravy or drippings that they fry. And then you dip them in mustard. And this is really popular. You'll see this at pretty much every bar or restaurant. You can get these. And then we had pea soup, which is a really popular winter dish. And it was served with this piece of rye bread with a cured bacon. This was really yummy. And then we've got stampot. And stampot is like a mashed potatoes that will have a vegetable mixed in. So there might be kale or carrots. So there's different varieties. And then the meat on top. Mine had this meatball that was kind of like a Salisbury steak. And then my sister had like a braised beef. This was okay. um, and then our dessert called Vafliep. This was a yogurt with a vanilla custard and then like a raspberry coulis. Just really simple and not too sweet. We really like this. We both agreed the pea soup and the dessert were probably our favorite, but we're glad we tried everything. All right, here we are on Light Supply in the square. This building here is the International um, Theater of Amsterdam. Amsterdam has a really vibrant art scene. And then I loved all of these iguana sculptures that were all over. They really looked real. All right, and then this is Fabo. This is a popular fast food chain in the Netherlands. And what it is an automat, which is super fun. So you go in and you put your card in, and then you press the button for whatever you want in the little window, and then you pull out your item. There's lots of like fried snack foods and little burgers and things like that. And so I have got a Kos souffle here. It's like a fried cheese, like a giant mozzarella stick, basically. So this is a fun late night food spot. All right, we survived day one. So day two, we hit up De Pipe, Dom Square, and Jordan. So we got out into more of the central areas of Amsterdam on day two after kind of getting our feet wet on day one near our hotel. All right, so our first stop was Albert Kuip Market. And this is in the De Pipe neighborhood, which is kind of a hip neighborhood. It's in the south. It's kind of just east of Oud Zoud, where we were staying. And this is billed as the largest outdoor market in Europe. I'm not really sure. I mean, it's large, but and I guess it's gotten more touristy over the years. It used to be more of kind of like a local market, but there are stalls with just kind of tchotchke things. But there's a lot of food vendors here, which is a big reason why a lot of people come out here to Albert Kuip. So you can see the picture here of the drop, which is Dutch licorice. I love black licorice, so if you don't like black licorice, you're not gonna like this. But so salted licorice is popular there. I know that's popular like in Scandinavia too. But she was giving out samples, so I asked her for her recommendation for a sweet licorice, and it was so good. It kind of leaned more towards a root beer type flavor. Anyway, I had to buy a little baggie of that. And then here we are at Rudy's Stroopwafels. So I think several places lay claim to the best stroopwafels in Amsterdam, but I saw this one come up the most. So we had to hit up this one. Okay. So here we are getting our fresh stroopwafels made. And this is Rudy himself making our waffles. So if you haven't had one of these before, you can get them, just packaged that you can buy. But these are served up hot off of the waffle iron. And the batter is kind of a spice batter, like a speculoos cookie taste, kind of. And then they're filled with a thin layer of caramel, and the caramel was just oozing out as you're eating this hot. Anyway, this is really good. You got to try one of these in Amsterdam. All right, so our street food adventure was not over. Then we had to have some frites, which you'll see served up usually in these little paper cones with a sauce on them, mayonnaise probably being the most popular. I've got here on mine a mayonnaise and satay sauce or peanut sauce. And the peanut sauce comes from the Indonesian influence in the Netherlands. And if you get this with onions added on, it's called an oorlog, which means war fries. I don't know where that comes from, but and then my sister got the curry ketchup, and that was really good too. All right, so we got rained on a little bit, and so instead of going straight into the center, we decided to go back to our hotel and drop off our stuff and dry out a little bit. And then we headed towards the central area of Amsterdam. And that's when we went, oh, here's all the people near the train station, because it really hadn't seemed that busy. The museums were kind of busy, but yes, everyone was down here. So these first pictures are Dom Square. The bottom picture there, that's the Royal Palace. The royal family doesn't live there, but they do have state functions and things there still. And then this passageway is just a really pretty passageway that you come across when you're walking across around this area. We went to do some cheese sampling. We went in a lot of cheese shops. I will say though, don't expect a lot of free samples of cheese. These samples were the tiniest little slivers, like barely big enough to even hold on a toothpick. So they're a little chintzy with it. But that was still fun to try some of the cheeses. And then here we're walking across the canal into Jordan, the Jordan neighborhood, which was the Jewish quarter of Amsterdam. And this is kind of the quintessential, you see photos of Amsterdam with the canals and the houseboats and the bikes. You're probably seeing Jordan. And I stopped here at this little stand for a snack. And this is a frikandel. This is a sausage, another fried snack, a lot of fried foods here. One thing we didn't try is the herring with the onions. We weren't quite brave enough to try that, but that's another popular street food that you'll find around. The sausage was okay. All right, just some more images of Jordan with the houseboats. And then you got the Tulip Museum and the Cheese Museum here. These were really more like shops. There are some small exhibits in there, but you know, Amsterdam, everything's a museum, right? So they lure you in by calling it a museum. I went in the tulip museum. My sister was really wanting to bring back some Dutch tulips with her, but there's only certain varieties that you can bring into the US and Canada. And unfortunately, they didn't have any here at the time. So, all right. So the Anne Frank house, this was kind of on the top of our list for Amsterdam. The first picture you see there, that is the entrance to the museum, the kind of modern building where you enter into the museum. And then the second picture, this is the house here. This is where Otto Frank worked. And I don't think I had a really clear picture of like what this was before. So they weren't in this building here that faces the street. This actually had another building behind it called the Annex. And that is the place where they built a passageway to connect them that was covered. And that's where they lived. They don't allow any pictures inside, so I don't have any pictures of the inside, but this was incredibly moving. I literally cried walking into her room. Definitely, if you have any opportunity to do this in your lifetime, I would recommend it. But it's just incredibly tragic when you think about that they were on like the last transports to leave Amsterdam. To the concentration camps. They were like this close, and still to this day, they do not know who ratted them out. So, and you may know that Otto Frank, the father, was the only person that survived from the house. And so he came back to Amsterdam, he discovered the diary, and he was very insistent that the house be kept exactly the way it was. And so that's why you can see it in the same condition as it was at the time. All right, some other pictures around this area. This first one here, the houses, you may notice here, you see these rods coming out and these hooks that are sticking out from the top of the houses. And that was to lift up furniture, to get furniture in through the windows because you couldn't get furniture up the narrow stairs. So that's kind of fun. And then you have picture here with the flag of Amsterdam, the three X's. This is not anything, this is not related to X-rated. um, but so you'll see this on a lot of souvenirs and stuff around Amsterdam. And then here we are on our canal boat. Of course, you got to go on the canals when you're in Amsterdam. So they start in several different areas around the city, but here near the Anne Frank House is a really popular pickup spot for the canal boats. And here we are out on the canal. We got the dusk tour. Since it was cloudy, we didn't have sunset views, but if it was less cloudy, you know, we probably would have had more sunset views. But this was nice to kind of see all the lights start coming on through the city. You see the houseboat there. I don't recommend this particular company that we use. I had seen it recommended and they had these kind of nice smaller boats. But there were two separate options when I booked. There's a regular cruise and then like a food and wine cruise. And I didn't realize that it was like the same cruise. They just gave like a wristband to people who ordered the like cheese and wine. And so our cruise turned into more of a booze cruise, which wasn't really the vibe we were going for. And the guided part wasn't really great. The tour guides weren't Dutch, and they were more like hosts because they were refilling people's drinks and their cheese plates during most of the time. So I wouldn't recommend this particular one. That was a little bit disappointing, but it was still beautiful to be out on the canals. Oh, and some women, two groups of women like got into a fight on the boat. It was like a whole thing. Anyway. All right, and you can just see this beautiful evening view down the canal. And that tower there, that is Westerkirk. And it's was under some preservation. That's what the blue is, scaffolding. And then we had to make a stop at Cafe Winkel for some Dutch apple pie. So this is probably the most popular place you'll see come up if you're looking for some Dutch apple pie. Some people claim it's overhyped, but we wanted to try it out. So you can see here just how tall the pie is. They actually make it in spring form pans. And then the crust was kind of a combo between a pie crust and like a coffee cake almost. And just filled with tons and tons of apples. And then we got it with the slogrum, the whipped cream on top. It was really good. The one thing we were kind of missing was a little bit more of that like pie goo, and that it didn't really have, but it was really good. All right, so that was day 2. We had a really nice full day. So day 3, we went to Zonteschans and Bloemen Market. This was actually, we went to Bruges in between here, but I kind of just wanted to do the 3 days in Amsterdam all together here for you. But so you can probably see that it rained that day and it rained all day. But Zonteschans is an open air museum. It is to the north of Amsterdam, and you can take a bus from the central station out there. It's outside of the zone where our transportation pass worked, so you have to get separate tickets for the bus. But so we went out there, and you've got just the iconic Dutch windmills. These are real working windmills that they have brought into the site from all over the Netherlands and created this cultural site. And this second picture almost looks like it's in black and white, but that's just how gloomy it was. But I just love all these really cute little green and white houses. And something that's interesting about Zonshoshans is people actually can live in these houses here. So there are people living out here. And we got the Zonshoshans card. So you can go out here and walk around. And then if you go in the different buildings, there's different experiences that you can like pay for. But we got the card where everything was all included. And then there's like a discount in the cafe and some other things. And so the windmills, like I said, they're working windmills, and each one kind of has a different theme and like does something different. So we went in this one here where they make peanut oil. And this is one of the things that you have to pay a separate ticket for if you don't have the card. But so it still works, and you can see the wheel is turning there, and this is where the peanuts would be pressed. And these are some of the pressed sacks. And then the peanut cakes, I guess they would use as cattle feed. And here's some of the peanut oil that they have made, and you can buy it. They sell the peanut oil that they've made right here on site. All right. I love this little goat. So there are some farm animals and things here. And then of course the Dutch clogs. You got to get the photo op with the clogs. So here we are in the clog building. And they have an exhibit as you come in with just all different kinds of clogs from different eras. And I had no idea there are so many different types of clogs. But these ones here are wedding clogs. So this would be something that the man would present to his fiance as an engagement present are these clogs that he had carved for her. So, and then they do demonstrations here of the clog making, but they weren't having any that day that we were there. And this is another one of the buildings that you can go into. This is the weaver's house. And another thing that you have to pay for without the card. But this was really interesting. This woman was doing some weaving and kind of telling all about how they would make the sails and sailcloth mostly. And again, these are all like real actual buildings that have been moved here on site. All right, here's some more of the little houses here that people live in. And then there's a couple restaurants. We went into the like cafe to have some Dutch pancakes. So if you haven't had these before, they're crepe-like, they're a little thicker, and they're quite large. And mine here has some apples and bacon. And then my sister's, I think, had cheese. So you can get them sweet or savory or kind of a combo. Definitely something to try. All right, and then we're in the cheese shop. We finally got some decent cheese samples. This is a Henry Willig shop, which is a popular cheese maker. You'll see their stores kind of all over Amsterdam, but and this is Gouda primarily. It is Gouda, not Gouda. And there's tons of unique flavors like lavender and all sorts of things. So that was fun. We spent a really good amount of time at Zonshoshans. We really had fun out there. And so we had left one afternoon, like kind of unscheduled, with a few things that we were interested in if we had time, or maybe we would come across something that we wanted to do. And so because we had spent a fair amount of time out here. By the time we got back into Amsterdam, I think it was around 3:30. I was hoping to get to one of the house museums. There are a ton of house museums in Amsterdam of some of these homes where the wealthy Dutch merchants lived that you can tour. But everything in the Netherlands closes really early and opens late. So expect like restaurants might not open for breakfast until like 9 a.m. And then just about everything, all the attractions are going to close by 5. The Anne Frank house is kind of an exception because I think they've got so many people. They go, I think the latest entry was something like 9:30 at night. Oh, the other thing I forgot to mention about the Anne Frank house, it has a unique reservation system. They only open up reservations 6 weeks out and then for a week at a time. And so I worked back on the calendar to figure out when the 6 week date was. And I didn't get up at like 4 a.m. or whenever our local time was that they went on sale, but I did, got on there pretty early in the morning to get our time slot for the museum. So that's something to keep in mind for the Anne Frank. It has kind of a unique reservation system. Anyway, but so because it was like 3:30, like we didn't have time to get anywhere and get in a tour or whatever. So what we opted to do was go to the Bloemen Market or the flower market. So this they call the floating flower market. If you look at these, you can see they're not really floating, but they do sit out on the canal. And so that's kind of why they call them that. But my sister was on a hunt for her tulip bulbs. So this isn't a market where you would see a lot of like fresh flowers. This is mostly bulbs. And then there's lots of like souvenirs and touristy things, magnets, all that kind of stuff. Actually, we found some of the stuff like that we were looking for. This is kind of a good area to go to just get some cheap souvenirs and things. So the gentleman in one of the shops told us it really wasn't the time of year that people would have any of the type of bulbs that you can import into the US. So we did end up finding some at the airport of all places. They had like a refrigerator that had some, and that's how they had some. And so my sister grew those and they bloomed this year. So that was awesome. All right, and here we're walking towards Rembrandt Plein. And you can see in the first picture there, that's one of the trams, the blue and white trams. And I just thought the city looked so beautiful like this in the rain with all the reflections from the rain. In the second picture, if you see that blue sign that it says Albert Heijn, that's a popular grocery chain in the Netherlands. So a great place to go into to look for snacks and candy and things to try. And then this really beautiful Art Deco movie theater here. And then here we are on Rembrandt Plein, where you'll find the statue dedicated to Rembrandt. And he did live in Amsterdam, and you can go to the Rembrandt house. They don't house his artworks there, but he did live there. And they've recreated what they think his studio might have looked like. So, and then you can see here the manhole cover with the 3 X's for Amsterdam. And then we had to try some Indonesian food while we were in Amsterdam. Like I mentioned, a huge Indonesian influence in the Netherlands that stems from the colonial history of the Dutch East Indies Company. So not always a good history, but there are Indonesian restaurants all over Amsterdam. So definitely something we had to try. I've heard chicken satay called the national dish of the Netherlands, which seems kind of odd at first, but that's another thing that you'll find it everywhere on bar menus and all over the place. So the popular thing to order is called a rice tafel or a rice table, where they bring out a bunch of small dishes that you kind of eat family style. So we got ours as like individual plates. They brought us each out a plate, but it's got a bunch of the items that you would find on a rice table. So we've got the chicken satay and several other things, and then you can get it with either noodles or rice. And so I've got noodles here, but this was really delicious. And then this is a Jenever. This is the Dutch gin and a popular product that originates from the Netherlands. And so the way you traditionally drink these, they serve it in these little tulip glasses. And to take the first drink, you put your hands down and then you lean forward and you sip off the top. And so I did drink it that way. All right, so this was our 3 days in Amsterdam. We really got in pretty much all the main things that we were hoping to see. 3 days was a good amount of time. With a fourth day, we could have got a few other things that we were interested in, but we opted instead to do a day trip to Bruges, Belgium. So Bruges is about 3 hours from Amsterdam, so it's not too far. There are no direct trains, though. You do have to make some connections. And so when I priced it out, the train was pretty expensive. And so we took a bus tour. And so, you do have to do one day, you do have a lot of travel time. But this was a pretty easy, convenient way to get to Bruges, and it was cheaper than taking the train. So, um, if you've seen the movie In Bruges, you may be familiar with this quote here. I know I'm awake, but I feel like I'm in a dream. So when you come into the center of Bruges from the south, which that's where all the tour bus parking is. So the entire city um, center of Bruges is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and so you can't just drive through the city. But the first thing you come upon here is Minnewater Lake, or the Lake of Love. And you can see it was just a gorgeous afternoon in February. And here we are going into the Begin house, the Beguinage. Um, so these are compounds where women, the Beguines, would come and live. They weren't nuns. They didn't take like religious vows like nuns. These might be widows or just women who didn't have any family. And so they would come and live and work at the Beguinage. And so this place just had kind of a magical feel about it with all the trees, and you can see um, the daffodils just starting to come up. I'd live there. And just all the quaint, charming buildings here in Bruges. And then here we've got the De Havman brewery, Belgian beer, huge, huge thing, huge export of Belgium. And this is fun. This picture here, you see these pipes. There is beer running through that. So here in the city center, they couldn't get a bottling facility with the capacity they needed for the brewery. So they actually built these pipes that go from the brewery out to their bottling site, and they run underneath the city. It's about 3 kilometers. And there is beer running under the city. So that's kind of fun. Just more of these really cute gingerbread buildings, all the carriages. And then there is a small canal around Bruges that you can take a little boat. It's pretty short. I think it's like a 20-minute to kind of make the loop around. And then we had broken off from the tour group at this point. Like I said, we kind of took that because it was the cheapest way to get to Bruges. We really enjoy guided tours, but there were some specific things that we wanted to see that we didn't think we'd have enough free time if we did the whole tour. So we split off from the tour. We went and we grabbed some lunch. So what I've got here is some frites that have a Belgian stew on them. Belgian stew is a meat that's braised in beer, of course. So imagine like the best poutine you've ever had. This is kind of what this was like. This was really yummy. All right, this is the Church of Our Lady. This is one of the places that we were wanting to visit in Bruges. And you can see this is just a really beautiful church. Lots of great stained glass. but kind of the piece de resistance here is the Michelangelo that lives in the church, this Madonna and Child. This is thought to be the only piece that Michelangelo did that left Italy during his lifetime. And it has apparently been stolen several times. This is one of the artworks that was recovered by the Monuments Men from the Nazis, and it was returned to the church. So you can see a Michelangelo in Bruges. All right, we're walking around the city. We're tasting chocolate. Had to try all the Belgian chocolate that we possibly could. And something you'll never find me doing, riding a Segway through Bruges, but I hope they were having fun. They could be security. I'm not sure. So you can see we're at the shop called the Chocolate Line. This is kind of one of the more contemporary chocolate makers. They've won a whole bunch of awards, but she's making chocolate eggs here. So she's melting the halves, and that's how she's sticking them together to make the eggs. So we're in the market square now. And you've got the famous Belfry of Bruges. Again, if you've seen the movie in Bruges, very pivotal to the movie. All right, we had to get our Belgian waffles. So we are at Chez Albert, and there was a pretty long line, but it was moving quickly. So there are a couple different styles of Belgian waffles. There's a Brussels style, which is probably more of what we think of when we say Belgian waffle. It's like a rectangle. It's the thick waffle. These are Liège waffles. And so it's a little bit different. It's like a chewier, doughier texture, and then it kind of caramelizes around the outside. This was so good. If you can go to Belgium just to have the waffles, I would probably do it. If you can kind of see in the second picture there where she's making the waffles, there in the front, the kind of yellow balls there, that's the waffles. So it is more of a dough than like what we would think of as a waffle batter. So really, really good. All right, and then we're in De Burgh Square here. This first picture, that is the Basilica of the Holy Blood. There's said to be a relic there that has Jesus's blood on it. And then this building in the center, that is the City Hall. It's from the 1300s. And then just another scene here with the busker out playing music. And here he is again, just in the most idyllic setting here. And then we're heading through Blind Donkey Alley. There are a couple stories about how this got the name, but just kind of one of the iconic landmarks of Bruges, Blind Donkey Alley. And here we're walking along the canal. This picture here at the bottom, this is kind of the famous corner here in Bruges with this weeping tree here. And then some people getting off of the canal boats, and then some of the famous swans of Bruges. I guess there's a legend about why the swans are trapped in Bruges. I don't know the whole story, but you'll see the swans all around Bruges. All right, so here we are. We're back in Amsterdam. This is Central Station, the central train station in Amsterdam, and it just looked really beautiful, all lit up at night. So it was a great day in Bruges. And all right, some other things that you could see with another few days in Amsterdam. Like I said, we could have done some more things here, but we did not regret going to Bruges at all. We both loved it. We thought that was really worth carving out a day for. So, but Keukenhof Gardens, that's the tulip gardens. Obviously, we weren't there at the time for tulips, but this is not like the huge tulip fields. This is a manicured botanical garden, but you can go and see a lot of the varieties of tulips, really popular. And then Edam, Volendam, and Hoorn. Those are some of the smaller towns on the peninsula of North Holland, like north of Amsterdam. And there are a bunch of tours that go out there. There's even a bus that kind of makes a loop around. So that's a popular thing to do. And then Haarlem is a city that's just to the west of Amsterdam, and it's described as kind of like Amsterdam in miniature. So if you just kind of want to get away to somewhere that's a little bit less crowded, that is a neat town to go to. And then you've got Delft. You've probably heard of the famous Delft blue and white Dutch pottery, and you can go there and do a factory tour. That's also where Vermeer is from. So you can go to his house. They don't have paintings there, but you can go and see where he lived and worked. And then The Hague, maybe not a touristy place, but if you're interested in that all, you can go to The Hague, which is the city, that's not a place. That is the seat of the Dutch government and lots of international organizations that are headquartered there as well. Delft and The Hague are both nearby each other in South Holland. So that's something you could definitely do in a day. So we had a really great trip. I definitely recommend visiting Amsterdam and Bruges if you have never been there. And also, not being too worried about having the perfect weather, perfect trip, doing and seeing everything there is to see, and taking advantage of the off season to travel on a budget. So, all right. Are there any questions?
Yes, we have a few questions.
Okay.
Some of them are from me. But, you said you got time reservations. Do they kick you out when your time is up?
They don't kick you out when your time is up, I don't think, but you have to be in within a window. I think it was like either a 15-minute or 30-minute window that you have to be inside and check in by.
Okay. Glad asked how cold it was it.
So this was one of the things we kind of were like, okay, does Amsterdam make sense for February? Are we going to be freezing? Obviously we hit rain and we were expecting that because in Amsterdam, it could be raining at any time of the year. So, February is not going to be worse than most other times for, it raining in the Netherlands. But temperatures were supposed to range around 40 to 50. Snow is not very common. And so we were anticipating down in the 40s, but actually when we were there, it was in the 50s. We didn't need our hats or gloves or any of the winter things that we had brought with us. So it was really pleasant.
Well, that's really nice.
Yeah.
I thought it was interesting that this Stroop waffle sign had the word original, so it was in English rather than in Dutch.
Yeah, you'll see most Dutch speak really good English. Most places, they're speaking English to you, no problem. So
Isn't it wonderful?
the one exception was we got on one of the trams, and so we were trying to get to our bus tour to Bruges, and we were taking the tram, and we got on our tram and it started diverting in the wrong direction, and we didn't know what was going on, and they were making an announcement, but it was in Dutch
Mm.
and they weren't saying it in English, and we think the tram like went out of commission or something, and like we panicked, and we got off and some other people got off and we're like, what's going on anyway? But yeah, so
Did you ever find out what happened?
no, so we had to stop at a different station and like transfer to a different tram to try to get down to where we had to be. So, but yeah, so the tram announcements were not in English.
Oh, that was not very courteous of them.
No.
So there Was the Anne Frank house actually their house? Because you said that the ground floor was where her father worked and the
Yes,
annex was in back.
it was the business where he
Okay,
worked at. Yes. And so the frontage of it was the business, you know, and the people, his coworkers that he had worked with, were the people who were bringing them food at night and doing all that kind of stuff and keeping them hidden there.
oh, okay,
They had to be, so only a few select people knew that they were there. So they still had to be, that's why they could only like get up at night and like flush toilets in the middle of the night, because through the walls, the people actually working there, you could hear.
sure.
So
Gosh. Jan asked, was the cheese sharp and pungent?
the Gouda is not a super sharp cheese. It's fairly mild. It's really good.
Nice. Carla said, beautiful carving on the clogs and cheese. Not the carving on the cheese. That was separate. Yum, she said.
Yes,
And,
I'm all about the cheese.
and
Like I
she
said, they were too stingy with their samples, though.
how rude. Of course, they wanted you to buy some, I
They want
suspect.
you to buy it. Yeah.
Carla also asked if you got a pair of clogs to take home.
I just bought like a little miniature pair. I didn't buy a pair that are wearable, but you can buy them. So,
Can you imagine walking around in them? I mean, I know that they did.
yeah, they did.
And the Dutch pancakes look really delicious. I put that on. And how come you can't import all kinds of tulips?
I don't know. I imagine it has to do with you've got to bring in varieties that have already been introduced to the US. And
Hmm.
so, and the ones that were approved had a special custom sticker on them saying that they
So
were
is it a Dutch restriction or is it a United States?
probably a US restriction. And you know, you could probably try to sneak some in if you wanted to, but we wanted to be on the up and up. And so we declared them and visited, you know, the agricultural customs person and got them through and all that kind of stuff. So
It's best to do that,
yeah.
to be up front.
Yeah.
Um, Tamara asked, what is the name of the windmill village?
It's called Zontaschans, and I highly recommend it. You know, it's a little, I guess you could say it's like the Disney-fied version, you know, of Dutch life. But like they are all real buildings. They're not recreations, they're actual buildings that they've relocated from all around
So,
Holland to make
so
them.
not just the windmills have been relocated there, but the buildings also have been
Yes. So
relocated.
like the Weaver's house, that was like a real um house that they moved there. Yeah.
Oh,
And
uh,
it's been around for a while, I think like since the 1960s, and they've slowly added different things.